What is up, adventurers, and welcome to a brand new ShawnSetGO video. Today's video is going to be covering a topic that I think a lot of players deal with in the game, and that is social anxiety. I think a lot of people struggle with playing the game and kind of overcoming those hurdles that the game presents, which is the end game practically just requires other people to play. And a lot of people just have decided with the new edition of Delves just to not cross that barrier anymore. So I am here to say that there is a reason, or there is a good enough reason to get past that hurdle, but I do understand the struggle behind it. And the post that I saw inspiring this says, I want to play, but I also don't want to play. I play at Blood DK, and I think I can play Blood DK. Always did Keystone Master with him, but every new season I'm more afraid to play with randoms. I have depression and social anxiety, and I use WoW as a bit to escape reality. I played WoW since Wrath of the Lich King and always loved it. But if you're toxic players in M+, I watched guides, did M0s, and have gear score 642, and I think I could make it. I don't want to make a single mistake because I'm afraid of random toxic players. I know that not every player is like that, but many of them. Some of them feel the same way. I mean, this person, honestly, in my opinion, is setting themselves up in a poor way because they think that they're not doing enough. This is more than the majority of players who are doing Mythic Plus are doing. I think it's like it's a overtime progression. You start doing dungeons and you're like, well, how can I do better now? Okay, now I'm going to look up the guides a bit more. All right, how can I do better now? Okay, I'm going to enchant my gear more. And then how am I going to do better now? Okay, I'm going to fix up my rotation a bit more. Or I'm going to fix my build a bit more. I think it happens over time as opposed in the beginning. And I think a lot of people think you have to do it in the beginning. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's something that people necessarily have to do. I think you can honestly avoid a lot of those things early on, and someone might give you crap about it for not being at that stage in the beginning, because a lot of people, I mean, this is a season 2, a lot of people are starting season 2 at the where they left off in season 1, which is, you know, it could be at the previous 3k mythic rating. So to them, even if they're starting in lower mythics, they're starting at their plus 10, 12s, and so on and so forth. So I think that these are things that you're gonna run into. It's just gonna happen. Unfortunately, the other things that you can do are run exclusively with a friendly guild or just not care. You can prepare, and that will help, but things happen. You'll still run into people who take their frustrations out on you or make you feel bad. Yeah, especially if, I mean, if you're in a significant role like a tank or healer, you're going to have to be a little bit ahead of everybody else. I recommend that anyone who's tanking go through it on DPS first. That way you kind of have that pre-game of understanding like what's supposed to go on. But it's hard to whenever you're DPSing to like, what is the tank doing? What do they have to do? So I think it is a bit harder for tanks and healers to get past that hurdle for sure. It's just the way it is. I used to feel so much shame and guilt too when these people would be toxic and flame me for the tiniest mistake too, until I realized they're just bitter and I have nothing better to do but to cry and chat. Like for me, this happened in a delve of all things. Like I ran a tier 11 delve, group went fine, but then someone decided that they were going to pull while we were doing underpin. And so everything went poorly. Like everyone died, and I'm standing there as tank as the last one alive because everyone just died all to the circles. They weren't ready. And then the group just fell apart. It's nothing that's necessarily my fault, but for some people, that's enough to where it's like, they're going to be like, why'd you do this? What'd you do? You know, and then the group falls apart. Sometimes these things are out of your hands, frankly. Kind of extreme, but you could also hide party chat. I wouldn't necessarily say that's the solution. I think there's people who mean well, and by blocking things out entirely, you block out the people who mean well. A good example is I'm reaching out to somebody like, hey, like you need to do this, and they're not responding. It makes me feel like that they're not quite listening. And then it's like, then you end up making other people just feel bad as well. So I don't think that necessarily that's the way to do it, but I get why people do that. I actually don't give a crap if someone tries some tryhard neckbeard gets pissy in dungeons. I'll move on to a new dungeon. They'll always be an awful person. But I also have been in the same guild since Shadowlands. If I'm feeling some kind of way about pugging, I can get a group of friends together. Honestly, I don't think you have to nowadays necessarily have a guild to do that. I think more in a sense, you're going to find Discord communities that serve you better, because you're going to have a lot more people who belong to a lot of different groups, because unfortunately, the way that the game works right now, we're all separated. We've all been separated by realms, and now that things are, you know, cross in that we can be in the same guilds, but you're still funneling yourself into a small set of groups. I think nowadays you have to have a Discord to really reach out, because there's only going to be so many people online before you're going to have to reach out to your friends list or go outside of the guild or pug a single or you know, pug more than one. It gets to be too much. So I'd say for most people, there are plenty of really decent communities out there that do just groups and or guild recruitment. So I highly recommend utilizing Discords for that exact reason as well. I'll group with you. I main Blood DK as well. Realistically, don't worry about what other players think or so. If you make a mistake, just learn and try to get better. I've seen actually a lot with paladins and mages, where there'll be two that group together and they do it to kind of, I guess, you have like one that's decent and then the one that's like not so decent, and they kind of like shadow each other. I think that's a good way of learning things too as well. I think you can learn on the job, and if you're doing Mythic Zeros, you're already ahead of the game because you've seen it before. I think that's really all it is. Like getting used to raids, getting used to Mythics. It's just seeing it in the most approachable way first, and then getting better with it. That way, when you get to the harder difficulties, it's not so bad. So I think a lot of people want to skip that because they're like, well, my item level says I can do more than this. It's not an item level thing. Honestly, I've seen people with lower item levels do better than people with higher item levels, and it's not even close. So it really isn't that. Full send on your keys, my dude. Now is the time to get in and make mistakes to learn. Yes, I like 100% agree with this. Early into a season, everyone's gonna be making mistakes. Everyone's gonna be pushing keys. You're gonna run into people who are, sure, they're tryhards, but you're also gonna run into a lot more learner groups than you would if you weren't doing it right now. And the worst part is this is only going to get worse and worse as the season progresses. It's better to jump in early because at least it's pretty even between the people who are relaxed and chilled versus the people who aren't. And I've said this before, honestly, the way to solve this a lot of times is just make your own group. Make your own group and make sure that, you know, it's chill people, you know, like learners, and progress your own keys. You know, that way the people who are joining are also chill as well. It takes a little bit more time and effort, and you do have to put yourself out there, but at least you're kind of filtering who goes into your group, so you don't have to worry about there being so much pressure. So, and a lot of people will share that sentiment with you. So it's a matter of how you approach it, but also be willing to pay it forward whenever it works for you. You know, like whenever you start to learn and you start to doing well, pay it forward to the next group. Then the next person who's also struggling to pull to pull mythics and get keys completed, be willing to pay that forward. I mean, this is only positive things for the community overall. If you as a person can progress through it and get through it and get better at it, then be willing to share those things and join communities and join Discords, join guilds that are willing to do the same thing. And if you don't have those, then build those. You know, be the start of that. Be the start of the change you want to see in the game. That's just the things that's all you can do within your power, or try to do anyways. And if you don't have the physical like effort or bandwidth to do that, then find somebody who has, because there's tons of people who do it. There really is. It really isn't this isolating island of solo players that they're just nobody wants to interact. People want to interact. People want to play with each other. It's true. Yeah, honestly, I feel you. I used to play loads of heals years ago with my friends, and it made getting past often pretty bad anxiety way easier, and I just had fun with the role. Haven't run Mythic Plus since Shadowlands, and these days it just feels hard to even group with pug content. None of my old friends still playing, and I've never had a guild, so just kind of drift in solo these days. I honestly think that healers, while they get the most flack, they have the most opportunity to really make or break groups, and honestly, they have so much more pull than they realize as well. So that's the thing. And it feels so niche because it's kind of like shamans, in the sense that, I mean, you only need one for lust, right? So it feels like, well, there's not as many as there are DPS, you know, and a vocal majority of DPS like absolutely destroying one healer it feels so one-sided just because there's numbers. And that's just really all it is. A lot of people feel that way. There are some great Discord communities, or at least there were during Dragonflight, that were great for finding groups and people. Honestly, I don't think this is great. This is the only cross guild chatter we really have. I mean, to me, you know, thinking about like upgrades and housing and things, those type of things, this is something that I hope housing does. I hope housing provides us with an ability to have cross guild chatter and cross community chatter of similar communities, so we can start grouping people together in the game instead of having to go outside in Discord. I like that these Discord communities exist, but I wish it was also in the game. So it's kind of like one of those things that I hope eventually does get outdated by it just being in the game eventually. So we'll see. But I think that if we're going to bring communities together, we need to go not just guilds, but also cross guild and maintain that cross realm, cross faction, like just truly just everywhere. We need to make sure that people can reach each other whenever their specific circle isn't enough. And that to me is important for the game's overall progression. If you're into, yes, I also feel the same. I've only done a few M0s and M2s this season, and I've been gearing myself with delves. People say join a progression guild, and I did, but in most cases they're already friends, so they only queue with them. The raids are also full, so they don't bring you or have patience to deal with somebody with no raiding knowledge. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I wish there were better ways to gear myself solo, like running 10,000 delves for one currency, and this the item costs 500, something like that. I mean, nowadays with delves and tier 11s offering the gilded crests, I think that's a huge change for solo players. I do think that there always should be routes for solo players to earn gear, to at least give themselves like their this is a classic term, but pre-bis. I do think that there should be routes for people to earn their pre-bis. Maybe it's just mid-level rating, or not, maybe not pre, but like mid-level mythics and mid-level rating, like doing normals, maybe up to heroic. I think that's where it should land you, to where like there's clear pathing, not just like random, like not relying just solely on vaults, but a route for solo players to go, okay, I can hop into a 3 to 5 mythic. I can hop into I wouldn't say normals, because normals are quite easy to jump into. I could jump to a heroic. As long as I know what I'm doing, I'll be fine. I'll be able to at least put up, you know, enough DPS to matter, or hold up as a tank or healer, as long as I know what I'm doing as far as my rotations. I do think that it should land you somewhere in that range, so it doesn't feel so awkward, or you don't feel like, well, this gear maybe doesn't put this gear is good enough, but it took me too long to get it, and because of that, now I feel like I'm behind because I didn't have enough time to practice mythics and do this. Felt like I did this, and once I hit here, it's like I'm at a stage where my gear is good, but I don't have, like, now everyone's already done. You know, everyone's already done with their season. Everyone's already got their 3K rating. They don't need me as a new person. We got to put people who are doing solo content into group content more comfortably. I think we have to not necessarily fast track it, but I do think there needs to be an obvious and clear route that gets you there with at least a decent amount of time. I think there's more routes than ever nowadays, but I don't necessarily think that's always 100% clear to everyone how that's done. So that's my thoughts on it. And then the next post that came up was this one. It says, pugs are so exhausting. And not even because they're bad. Most people I play with are fine. And everyone, I'm 2600 IO currently, and everyone is just so angry at everything. Doesn't matter if the key, we can still make the timer. If someone died 2 to 3 times, there's inevitably someone who flies off the deep end, stops moving or attacking to type a novel, and ironically sabotage the run themselves. I can heal HP bars, but how do I fix the lack of parental love some of the DPS have? I don't think it's always DPS. This is not exclusive to DPS. It's just, once again, quantity over anything else. I've had tanks who run things like ridiculously controlling, and then I've had healers as well who are too afraid to admit that their rotations are not up to par. I think what makes pugs so exhausting is because there's a timer. There's no way for you to experiment and learn. I think in order to fix this, I think there needs to be earnable gear along the way, to where even clearing 1-2 bosses is still you can still earn some successful things. Even if it's like warbound things, I feel right now with mythics, you have to all or nothing it. And if you don't get there, a lot of people are like, well, it's predictably bad. Whereas in the past, say if you're doing like a BRD run, as long as you got to the boss that you were looking for that possibly had something, you got your piece of gear. It's like, hey, we didn't get all of it, but we got some of it, and like that's okay. Like that's fine. So I think what needs to happen for Mythics is there needs to be much more milestone achievements, in a sense that you do a first boss, second boss, say that everything goes well up until the last boss, right? The last boss, you can't pull it out, but you keep on trying, because on the first boss, one person got a piece of gear, second boss, another person got a decent piece of gear, just stuff in the middle there. Not only to gear fill, but also to kind of pay repair bills. that's the big thing, the worry with Mythics, because it is so costly inevitably. So I think that's what needs to happen to pugs, and ultimately this is what needs to happen to where people can feel like they can learn in a pug without it being so demanding or so brutal when things don't go well. And I think that's the thing. People don't want to disappoint other people. We like to think that people are ignorant on purpose. I've played with plenty of Mythics, and there are people who struggle or just make mistakes. But in order to bridge that social anxiety and to really bridge where people are struggling, I think there needs to be more things in the game that go like, hey, you tried. This is the participation trophy speech that I will give. Like, hey, you're not getting the Mythic score, like the Mythic rating score, but there's at least something you've earned along those lines. I don't know, but let me know in the comments. What are the ways that we can make pugs less exhausting and less of a social anxiety barrier for players? Because ultimately, it's a community thing. It's a community sentiment. Or are we just destined for toxicity in the end all be all? Who knows? But I hope you enjoyed the video. Of course, if you liked it, give it a like, subscribe to the page while you're at it, as well as join us on the stream when we are live. Of course, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.